Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Hello and welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. You know, Jerry, our topics that we have on our podcast, I know that we really try to go deep, right? We try not to just hit that surface level. At our point, right? We try to really dig in. And I think that's really the topic today of our podcast episode with our fantastic guest.
Get ready for a great ride that really makes you think. You know, we love things that make us think deeply, as Jamie was saying. And I met Zuica at a conference, a Schlick dinner conference in Florida, and we had dinner together. And she was telling me about her book, but she was so understated about it. I was like, okay, I'm going to get her book because she's amazing. And then I ordered it and it came. It was like, wow.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Yeah. And Zuica came to at the same time I was writing a book. So it helped me think deeper. And I've come to some revelations, I think, by the two of those things crossing paths. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes. Let's start out with your diverse background. You have so many credentials and things that you've done professionally that has led to this book. Tell us a little bit about your background before we get rolling.
Yeah, I think, you know what, it starts off because I'm a pretty curious person and I love to learn. So I think when you see my background, that's really what it's representing. So I was initially a special education teacher. I taught seventh graders. And then I've just been driven by questions. I had a kiddo one time when I first started teaching. It was what back in the day you'd call a self-contained ED room. So kiddos that really struggled with emotionality.
Yes.
I had a kid flip a desk and just, utter some profanities. And I remember sitting there, I was like 22 and I was like, why would someone do that? No one comes to school and does that, right? And so when you think about kind of my journey and credentials, like I then studied to be a therapist. I wanted to know the innermost, how we're wired. And then it was like, well, how do you move things forward? Which led me then to become an administrator and a director of special ed. And then I started to get different ideas and wondered what it would actually look like to work with a whole bunch of different schools. So again, I always say life is not linear. You just, you have to be like, you got to wear a little like loose clothing, right? You just never know, or like, draw it in pencil and be very open to what the journey provides. And so I took a leap of faith and I opened up my own business. And it continues, right? I still work with schools. So I then spent 5 years working with schools around mental health and really studied different versions. So you'll hear me say, like, I have certifications of different coaching, but it's all in the name of really understanding ourselves. And now I'm currently in District 70 as an assistant superintendent of student services. So I oversee special ed and multilingual services. So, but I think when you think about what your values or your compass is really supporting people in the journey of growth. I think my tagline will always be, I like for people to think about their thinking. I like to think about like I always say, like, sometimes we live life where people are playing their movie on our screen and really it's our movie. So like, how are we going to, well, thanks. I use that all the time, by the way. I was like, is somebody playing their movie on my screen? So really thinking about and taking ownership of your own thoughts, which, let's be honest, ladies, the other piece of that is that's what we want in our schools for our students and our adults, to have a healthy level of autonomy. And when someone says something to you, actually try it on for size. So that was a long-winded way of, so here I am. Yeah. So
no, it helps get to the meat of your book. And I think that the fact that you ask a lot of questions, like why would a student do that? In education, we run so quickly to stop behavior
Yeah.
that we don't take the time. I believe, me personally, I didn't
Yeah.
take the time to find out what's the root cause of this.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
really going on here?
Absolutely. And if you think about the schools in general, like we forget that we're probably, if not one of the most relational fields there is out there, right? And the construct, like with the most important cargo, which is our children, and I don't say cargo like, right? And so I think when we think about the things of curriculum and such, they're so important to know. But the other piece is, we're social individuals, and how we co-regulate and co-serve each other in terms of social, like social pieces and social emotional pieces is key, which is why partly I wrote the book. I think in today's world, it's ever changing. And so I think it's so important, educators or adults that are working with students really understand how they're wired. Because the premise of what I started to think about is, what if you have a student who has difficulty connecting, right? And you're tasked with something like connect with them. But what if you too, as an adult, don't actually have that skill or don't know how to do that? And what if you never find out? And I think about, when you think about an educational institute, it should never just be for students. We have to have the posture of lifelong learners and be curious about ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Because some of the times we're closed off to a certain amount of learning. And it's not because of the learning, it's because we don't want to sometimes,
mirror.
not to sound
Think of that
woo,
mirror.
like kind of just say, oh, my ego's involved here, and those kinds of examples. So
So it's really interesting because I think as teachers, we're really good about teaching metacognition and helping students think about their thinking in terms of
yes,
content, but
yes,
not as good as you just mentioned about digging into the root cause and the why behind people behave in certain ways that they do.
yes,
Because we may not, as adults, be as good in doing that for ourselves. So,
yes.
what are some suggestions and guidance and tips that you give adults to help them with students, help themselves first, and then help the students as well? Because a lot of times it's that reaction that we do instead of a response. We need to
Yes.
think first before we have that true response and guide students in terms of that thinking about their why. So how do you
I
help teachers help do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think
Educators.
it's like you do have to interact with the knowledge. So I think there's a part of where you have to learn a little bit about your own triggers. And I always say, if you spot it, you got it. So if there is something where I always say, if something starts to irritate me or something I like kind of comes up for me, it's about getting curious about those things versus putting it in a box and defining it like, this person did this, and right, and therefore it's just that, like it's their fault or whatnot. And ways you can do that is, right, understanding if there's a level of urgency, if like you feel kind of like you're ruminating about something. So the way that I actually go about it in my craft is typically like almost like a teaching, which you don't need me to do, right? You can grab any kind of knowledge about, right, the topics of triggers, about I'm just like shame topics or whatnot. And then you just think about it through the lens of, what about my day? What is it that triggers me? What is it about this person that frustrates me? Right. And actually ask yourself more questions than give yourself absolute answers. Right. Because we actually, it's very difficult for us as a human race to live in a level of uncertainty. But when you think about growth, that's really like, those growing pains are necessary. So I always think your brain can't stay empty. So this is why we talk about replacement behaviors and such. It's like a cell phone, where it's looking for the service. Same thing with your brain. So you actually have to replace some of the things that you know to be true, and um, and feed it a different, get books. So I see a lot of people sometimes, right? In their family of origin, family they grew up in, money, right? Everybody has a different opinion on money. So, so when you're an adult, it may not be fitting to how you're actually wired or how you and your family do it, but you have this rhythm, this conditioning that comes into place, which it can impact you in your family. It can impact you even in the classroom, right? When you have a student that, right, like has really nice things, like you don't even realize the undercurrent. So some of the time is like exposing yourself to different, awakening yourself to different things. I had a client one time, she was so nervous. She had such anxiety about not like what people would think of her everywhere. So I had her, this was way back, but I had her go sit in a mall. And I said, I want you to watch people. I want you to watch people and see how they react. And she came back and she's like, Sweeta, everybody just kind of does what they want, right? But she wouldn't have ever known that because she was so in her head. So those are the things I always say: observation, observation, listening to how somebody else might live their life, and exposure. But like for educators, we have to have space to have these conversations. So that's how I would go about it. It's like thinking about your thinking and replacing it with like other versions of things, right? It's kind of like when you travel, if you're open, you'll see different cultures, and it does change you if you allow it.
Right.
So that makes sense. I mean, and earlier you made a reference to an analogy with a movie. And I think that's similar here, right? So it's almost like we have to put a pause on our day, on our life, and kind of zoom in and look at it with a
Yes.
little bit more detail, right? Observe it a little bit more. So maybe, jotting things down if you can't do it right there in the moment.
Yeah.
Just kind of writing it down maybe and being able to look in on that, like, why did that bother me? That probably shouldn't have, but why was that a trigger? And
Yeah.
really kind of zoom in on that, because like you said, we just kind of, and like Jerry, you said earlier, like we just kind of like go, right?
Yeah.
That's how our day is structured.
To that point, we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. And so if we don't start to think, right, like it's this idea of like there is actually an openness more. And I think that is actually where the real empathy resides, where you
Yes.
start to say like, you know what, like I don't have that always the answers to that, or I'm not always right in that, or I'm really good at that, or something to that extent. And it actually opens you up to humanity. Like there is an empathy that happens. I hear a lot of the times when people are like, oh, now that I'm healed, I've done my inner work, it's harder for me to be around, like I can't always be around certain people or whatnot. Actually, I think it's the opposite. You still want to be with people who feed you an energy, but I actually think it's easier to be around with people when you've done the work, because it's just you see through a very different lens. So,
Yeah.
And are you ever healed?
what?
Are you ever healed? It seems
Not
like a journey that
That's
never ends, right?
No,
Yeah.
that's such a great point, Jerry, because there isn't. It's this idea of it's just about like growing. And some days, like there will be seasons where like I'm good. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't always have to be on the journey. I think the piece of it is like we already have everything we need within. It's just about discovering a little bit, just a little bit more about ourselves. Or I always say there were things that potentially worked for you when you were a kid or a younger adult, and you have to ask yourself, do those things still work for me now? And if they don't, ask yourself, why are you holding on to them? And a lot of the stress that we experience as adults, or even educators, is because we're constantly thinking this is the way it should be, or this is the way that I think other people would want me to be. And you have to, Jamie, to your point, put a pause and really say, what's my movie, right? Someone might think I'm selfish, but what's my movie, right? Because you can't live your life with everybody's perception over you.
And the empathy part that you mentioned is so important too, because a lot of times we assume intent that is really just has never crossed someone else's mind. It never occurred to them. But in your mind, it did, because that's where you are. But
Yeah.
then really their perspective is, oh, no, that's not why I said that. I never even thought about that. And
Yeah.
then maybe they reacted instead of responding in a particular way. And then
Yeah.
you take offense, but really they're going through something. There's something happening. And if
Yeah.
you can take the time to realize when you do that yourself, then you
Yes.
become more empathetic to realize other people are going through something and doing that too.
I
And
love that
so
so
what-
much. And that's the truth. If I end up ruminating about something too long after an interaction, I literally will call the person up or have a meeting and be like, okay, there is a tape that is playing and it will not stop. This was my perception. Can you let me know what you thought? Right. And in
Yeah.
fact, sometimes relationships grow deeper because of that. It's,
Sure.
to your point of like more empathy, because you're like, no. And sometimes, ladies, people just have a bad day. Like, and like
Yeah.
somebody's a little off and that's okay. Like, so yeah, my opinion, but
And in today's age, when we do so much communicating via text,
yes.
it's
Little bubble.
hard to know what somebody
Yeah.
really meant.
Yes. And it's true. Yeah.
Would say something one way, like, "Oh, she said blah 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 blah," and really, she really meant blah. Blah,
That's
It's like,
exactly. I have like a phobia now when I'm doing any message. I'm like, smiley face. Because I'm like, please don't assume ill intent, right? But it's true. But that's a really good point also, because we have all different ways of communicating. So there's more ways to even have
figure it out.
offense if we're not careful. Because we want to assume positive intent, but that's hard to do, right? When something has triggered us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your book, and then you also have a companion workbook
Yes.
with it. Tell us about that
Yeah.
and what we can expect from
Sure.
your work.
So the premise of the book is, right, just how we have curriculum or, that kids need to learn. We also are actually born with 5 core biological needs. They're innate in us. And those are connection, attunement, autonomy, trust, and love. And sometimes what happens is when we're younger, for a variety of different reasons, right? A lot of difficulties in the house, there could be some trauma pieces. Life could have just kind of gotten in the way, for lack of better words. Those can actually get compromised. And so what ends up happening is you end up picking up behaviors to help support getting those needs met. But those behaviors are almost like a false self. Like, they aren't behaviors of your natural flow. It's just to kind of keep you safe. And so what I talk about is I go through those characteristics in the book. So sometimes you can recognize, gosh, I do that. And actually it causes me strife in my life, in my relationships, or how I teach, or whatever it might be. And so I go over kind of like those signs, but then a little bit, and through storytelling, also through my own experiences of myself, or even clients I've had in my therapy chair, right? Is that there is a way to help support and understand, and you can do that through the companion guide, is really understanding where those got compromised and where you can actually begin to let them go. Because the first step, ladies, the research is clear, the data is clear, is the way that this happens is through self-awareness.
Yeah.
And if you're not aware of it, a lot of the times when I've gone to conferences and I've taught this, people have come up to me and they're like, I've actually never known that about myself, because they've never been exposed to it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's this idea of is understanding the things you can let go, and understanding the healthy way connection, attunement, autonomy, love, and trust can be built. Because let me give you an example for autonomy. One of the characteristics when it's compromised, you were not given the autonomy you needed as a child. So you were kind of obedient, right? So just listening to what everybody else does, but that takes your power away. But one characteristic of it is that actually with any interaction you have, you project authority on that person. So you're waiting for them to actually tell you what to do, even though they don't want that role. But
Right.
you've been so taught in that regimen. So when they don't tell you what to do, you're kind of like, what are you doing? And there's like sometimes an inner anger that might come in because you're waiting for that. When in reality, you don't have to wait for that at all because you have your own autonomy that you can build off of. But if people don't know that, right, or attunement, some people with attunement were taught that their needs were selfish and they were taught never to have really needs. And so can you imagine going through life taking care of everyone else except for yourself? What kind of life do you think you would lead that way?
And I
Right?
think in both cases, women are socialized
Mhm.
that way as
Yes.
well. So
Yes.
it's not just your family or how you were
Mhm.
brought up, but it's society as well.
I would agree with that, right? And so, yeah, so it's not just, Jerry, that's a great point. It's not just the family pieces, is like as you go along, there are things that keep affirming those messages. So you think
Yeah.
this is the way it should be, but you're running ragged. It's not working for you, right? And so, yeah, and I think that that's the piece to remember. And these things, so when these are compromised, they impact three different things the data will show you, right? Is interpersonal relationships, your self-perception, how you feel about yourself,
Mhm.
excuse me, duh, and then how you regulate. So here's the one thing to remember, ladies, which is so key, which when I first learned this really made me think is when it goes different, right? So that person doesn't tell you what to do. In the example of autonomy, you actually can become dysregulated. And then all the decisions you make is out of a place of dysregulation. And when you're in your limbic system, right? Or your brainstem, like your amygdala goes, you're actually shut down to problem solving, to being relationship. There's a feeling of scarcity, right? A feeling of black or white, like this is the way it is. And so it actually hurts you even more. And the more you're in that, you lose neural pathways to your prefrontal, to your new, because, right, what you don't use, you lose. And so if we're constantly in that state, we actually become more susceptible to pain points than we would if we're actually functioning on our prefrontal cortex, like our front of the brains, which is the good stuff. It's the prioritizing, it's the empathy, it's the relational piece. And those are what you see in real time. No one is ever going to say like, oh, attunement is compromised. What you're going to say is, I don't have good interpersonal connections because how can I if this relationship is not reciprocal? If I'm only meeting your needs. And when I don't meet your needs, I become dysregulated, right? And that messes with my self-perception because then I feel bad about myself if I'm not meeting your needs. Do you see how it's interconnected?
Domino effects. Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so those three pieces is why, why we kind of go through life being like just tired, right? We can't even name it anymore. And like the body research is so clear on how this stuff impacts us. We have a very big increase on autoimmune diseases, on right different things that I think the body is responding to kind of like, and I'm not a doctor, but like kind of how like what's
Right.
not working for us, right?
So this is so interesting because I feel like right now, maybe it's the age I'm in, but well, not really. I think it's just out there. There is such an emphasis on the differences between generations right now.
Mhm.
In media, so much of that right now. And I can't, I heard what Jerry said. I'm hearing what you're saying. And I feel like your book is going to help break some of the cycles that have been passed down to us. Because I feel, and not even just family, as you mentioned, but just society in general, right? I really feel like, and I feel like maybe your companion guide, it's almost like essential to go with your book for it to really, for the book really to hit home, to really do what it's supposed to do. Now, I know you probably wrote this for educators, but I feel like it's really
Anyone can use it.
I want to buy it to my daughters, actually. Like, I think it's a great, I like a whole family thing I would love for all of us to do because I feel like it's such a cool way to not just skirt by things, but to really dig in and understand so that we can be better and do better. And, for ourselves, for society, and just understand. I mean, it's cool to understand why we tick and why we do the things we do. And so
Absolutely.
I think this is such a great guide to help us
Yeah.
do that.
And I think the other piece is that is actually why I wrote the workbook, because it's years and years of journaling on my part, right? I'm someone who write, and I started to think a little bit about what that would mean for someone if they were doing it. And there are even like some of my clients, right? They'll pick a part up and they'll not ruminate, but work through it for 3 months and really dive deep. It's something that doesn't have to be rushed. I think a lot of times people pick up, because the work is not rushed. You're always growing, you're thinking through. A lot of times people will pick up a book and say, okay, I'm going to do these 8 easy steps. And it's not necessarily that. It is very much like, okay, where does this one trigger come up in all of my day, like my whole week? Where does it typically, with who? Right. And kind of go from there. But I agree, it's not just for educators. I think we all need this work as a society, right? Is like to dig a little bit deeper for ourselves. There's a great book out there called The Shallows by Jamil. I think it's Jamil Zaki, but he talks a little bit about how even in today's world, because we're getting so much input in our cognitive load, that we are as a society becoming more like jet skiers than scuba divers. And we have to be very careful with that, because we don't want to be so surface, right? Because we're so relational. We are wired for this. That, right, the more shallow things become, the harder it becomes for us to know ourselves and to connect with others. And that's actually what, it makes us grow, like keeps us, they did an experiment with rats and addiction. And they put a rat in with nothing in the cage, and the rat would, eat the heroin and water or drink it, and basically kind of went crazy. But then they did the other experiment where they put an obstacle course in there, and they put other rats in there. And none of the rats, they tasted the heroin, but they never went back to the heroin, because they had like other people, and they had each other. We are the same way. So
Yes,
it's true. I didn't do the experiment. Some smart scientist did, and I remember it. Yeah.
Like that touches my heart, right? Like
Yeah.
people
Right.
have something in their lives, people in their lives.
Yeah. That's why. Yeah. So Jamie, to your point, that's why it's so important to go deep, and not with everyone. I want to be very clear. I'm not at the grocery store being like, in this path, like, we won't do that, ladies. Let's not, so yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. But I love that. And is that the author's name? Can you say the author's name again? Because I do love that. Scuba.
Yes.
You want a jet ski, you want a scuba dive.
Yeah. So it's Jamil. I know it's Jamil, and then I want to say it's Zahki.
Okay.
He has the book The Shallows, The Coddling of the American. He's got a couple of them. And then his newest book is The Hope of the Cynic, which I've read. He's a great author. I would recommend him 1,000-fold.
That's terrific.
Wow.
There's one thing I hear so much about now, and I wonder if you can shine some light on it, is anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
many people have anxiety and are triggered. And
I mean, have we had it and we just didn't put a label on it? Is it something that because of, post-COVID or whatever, is it something that's more prevalent? So, yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a number of reasons, like society, but I think a lot of the times we haven't labeled it, but a lot of anxiety is like future forecast, right? Like the what ifs. But the worry, I think it's still focused in what I'm talking about is, right, interconnections, how you feel about yourself and how you're regulating, right? And the thoughts that you're thinking. It's a mind game. And if we're not regulated, we're not even able to touch the real, the prefrontal cortex thoughts, right? Like, for example, when I'm well rested, let's say a car cuts me off, if I'm already depleted, right? And a car cuts me off, I'm enraged. Like, and sometimes I am anyway, even if I'm not depleted. But it's those kinds of pieces. And anxiety is just us living in this, and there's more to it. So I'm giving you like a shortened version, but it's going through life a little bit of this worry of I'm not enough. What if this happens? But if you actually think about your thinking, you'll ask yourself, and what if it does happen? Like I used to think about, ladies, what I used to worry about when I first became a director, because I was so green, I was so nervous. And I thought the other day I was worried about something a meeting I had to have. And then I remembered, I was like, do I remember any of the meetings I had 10 years ago that would cause me worry? And the answer was no. And so I said to myself, Zuica, then don't lose one more minute thinking about something you can't control, right? That it will go the way that it will go. And it's us labeling something as good or bad that actually is what causes us anxiety. If sometimes we look at something, and I know this is very hard to do, this is a practice I have, is it just is.
Yeah.
We take the tension out of this idea, like, I'm going to worry about this because we're worried, because we want the outcome to be the way we want it, because that's the way we would handle it.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to feel the way that the outcome might be. But
Right.
sometimes when it goes not our way, it's actually better. Sometimes it's better for us, but we don't allow it to take its course. We're trying to grab onto certainty and things we were never meant to control. I hope
We
that
tell
answers
ourselves
it.
stories. Yeah, we tell ourselves stories all
Yeah.
the time. And that's
Yeah.
where that anxiety lies. I can't remember where I heard, someone say, it's never as good as you think, and it's never as bad as you think.
Oh my God, I love that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. So
It's true.
Yeah. And that's really just the way to kind of, take your perspective.
to take it. And so we have to play with our mind. We let it control us, and we have to say, we got to talk back to it. Be like, that's not my movie. Yesterday I had a friend who said some things that worried me, and then I was like, no, that's not my worry. I don't know what I'm doing. So like that, I just was like, yeah. So those are the kinds of, I think, just thinking about your thinking.
Yeah. I had a good friend a few months ago. We were talking about something and I was worried about something. And she said, why don't you just be like a good waitress and say, not my table? And that has helped me so much.
Oh my God, I love that so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so many times I'll say to my husband, that's not my table.
I really have to write that down. That is so good. I'm going to
Yeah.
use that too. It's not my table. So sorry.
Yeah. And it really makes sense. So not for me to worry about.
It's not. Yeah. Sometimes that's a good point though, Jerry. We sometimes grab things that aren't ours and we worry about, and that's it. It's like, nope, I'm not servicing that. That's good.
Yeah. Not servicing that. That goes for the table. Love it. Love it.
It's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, so do you do speaking? How can people get in touch with you? How can they buy your book?
For sure. So I do speaking events, yes, and I help coach, and consult around these topics to help the groups even like in real time. So they can email me, they can use my phone number, whatever, and get a hold of me that way. So
okay. All right. And your book is available on Amazon.
On Amazon, yes. Yeah.
Hold it up one more time.
Here it is.
This is the book, and that's the
Wow.
workbook.
So this is the book, and
Okay, workbook. It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I know we're landing the plane. We're closing up. But can you tell
the workbook?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's fabulous.
It's
Thank you.
great.
Can I have a humble brag? I created that workbook all by myself, like the graphics and everything. I did. I sat hours and hours and hours, and the everything, to the colors, to the everything. So
The quotes are fantastic.
yeah. So those are, I'm a word person. Like, give me any words. I love to connect them or whatnot. And I just think when I have to believe that's true for the two of you. When you really believe in something, like, it's not just about like you want to do the good work for it, right? And
Right. Right. And you
So-
want to do it, and you can tell that it is a labor of love.
Yes.
so much into it.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
and I love aesthetically pleasing things. So that made
I
me a
do
little
too.
bougie there too.
Yeah,
So
so look at that. Isn't it just beautiful?
thanks, Jerry.
Fantastic. I mean, it was important that I guess that you spent that much time on that because you want everyone who has it to spend that much time in it.
Yes.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's really a place for them to be introspective and to really dig deep. And so you
Yeah.
want it to have that bougie feel and to want to be
it.
there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the whole premise, if I think, like, I know we're winding up, is not so the end game is not so, yes, it is for you to be aware, but the end game is actually to free you up from all the things that keep you caged so that when you're with someone else, right, it's an expression of how humanity should be with each other. And that's actually, it's so that my love in life is that how I think about how I'm doing it with students or other people I've known is that connection with the other, right? Whoever that other is. Data will show you, even with all of these pieces that, like, let's say they've been compromised, it takes one person in your life to come in and change the tape. And there's a quote unquote, like a change that starts to happen, a growth. So anyways.
You could be that one person in many.
Oh, I love it. I could listen to you all day.
Oh, ditto. You guys are great. This was fun. I was so nervous. And
So fun.
Yeah, fun. I can't wait to get it myself. Them.
Oh,
yes.
The
You will
penny
love
art.
it, Jamie.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Can't wait.
Well, thank you so much for being
you.
a guest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you guys so much. This was great. I love your energy. This was a lot of fun. So
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun and learned so much as well.
yeah. Ditto.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great women, like, when we come together, right?
That's right.
It enriches your
Listening.
thinking. So awesome. Thanks.
Yes.
Mhm.
You bet.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube.